I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, February 4th, 2014 meeting of the Township of South Orange Village Board of Adjustment. May we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Don.
Here.
Mr. Polipiano.
Here.
Mr. Reeves.
Here.
Mr. Adler.
Here.
And Ms. Werwin.
Here.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, PL 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by publishing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2014 in the December 2013 edition of the South Orange Maplewood News Record, and by filing said notice in the office of the village clerk.
Should we amend that, since I doubt if it's posted on the wall at Village Hall right now?
Well,
Where was it posted, Jenna?
It's still on the bulletin board. It's the same.
Where, though?
In the
Village
clerk's
Hall?
office, it's like a little hallway.
Okay. It's at the village clerk's office.
Yeah, like right outside. It's
Yeah,
a little
okay.
hallway.
Okay, before we get going, I just wanted to note that this evening we have 5 members. That is a quorum. We are waiting for the Board of Trustees to either appoint 3 new members or reappoint our 3 members whose terms recently expired, Mr. Semper, Mr. Descala, and Mr. Shapiro. We haven't heard word from the Board of Trustees yet. There have been interviews conducted. They may still be going on, but that's the situation we're in at this moment. So with members whose terms have expired, they've not been reappointed, and so legally they're not allowed to sit. That's my understanding, and I think that's your legal advice in some.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the first business is approval of minutes for the regular meeting held on Tuesday, January 7th, 2014. Mr. Adler made a comment about denying the application. You saw that, Jetta?
Yes.
And I think that was the only change that anybody suggested. Anybody have any comments?
No, I think that with that change, they were fine. I would move to approve them as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Don.
Yes.
Mr. Polipiano.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Adler.
Yes.
And Ms. Werwin.
Yes.
Okay, before we get to the actual application at hand, which is at Richmond Avenue, we're going to have Seton Hall come forward and we'll confirm that they're being carried.
Thank you very much. Nicole Dory on behalf of Seton Hall University.
So we have the plan is to carry Seton Hall to May's meeting.
That's correct. We've asked that the application be carried for a few months. There's a litigation pending concurrent with this application, and the defendants in that lawsuit are some of the neighbors. So we're just trying to resolve as many issues as possible before the application proceeds before the board.
Okay, all right.
I guess I'm a bit confused about the relationship between the litigation and the application. The litigation is specifically related to your proposed use?
Yes, the litigation concerns the release of a deed restriction that affects the property, and the university's position is that the deed restriction needs to be released in order for their use to, in order for them to be able to use the property and have marketable title.
Why is that not part of the application question as opposed to a separate litigation?
Because it's a private deed restriction between the lots that are affected, and it's not part of the zoning application.
The lots affected are not part of the zoning application?
They might be, but that's a
I think
separate.
they are, right?
Probably are.
Right.
But whether or not there's a private deed restriction does not come before this board. It's litigated by those lots that are affected. It's essentially a contract between the lots that are in the deed restriction.
But we ask about deed restrictions and covenants on deeds when we review applications, right?
It is on the checklist.
Yeah, so, but you're saying it shouldn't be on the checklist?
We're getting some feedback up here.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be on the checklist, although the question is why it is.
Right,
because
if it's not.
For our purposes, the Board of Adjustment doesn't have any jurisdiction over whether or not there's a deed restriction. In fact, it could hear the case and grant the case, grant an approval for a property that is subject to a deed restriction, and then if that couldn't be built as a result of this deed restriction. It really has nothing to do with whether or not they had a zoning approval for it.
That's news.
No, that's the same.
Well, it's different than we've been acting, let me say that, right? I mean, we haven't had this issue, this specific issue before, but we've certainly raised questions about whether there are deed restrictions on property we're looking at as if it was pertinent to the question of whether we would approve the application or not.
Well, obviously Seton Hall thinks it's pertinent, so they want to wait, and hopefully this will be resolved one way or the other. I mean, that's their prerogative to wait. I don't mind carrying them. It's not a burden at us on this point. I don't think there's anything legally wrong with their asking to be
No,
carried.
if they consent to the adjournment, we can carry it.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
So the Seton Hall's request to carry it to May.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so
When's the meeting in May? Jeff?
meeting in May, oh boy. May 8th.
Okay, thank you very much.
May 8th.
Thank you. Okay, so I should also note that Fairview at 2104, if you remember that application from way back when, has been carried to the March meeting. So this evening, what we have the elections of officers. The election, and do we have the oath of office also that we need to take? Okay, so elections of officers involves a chairman and a vice chairman.
Yes.
So do we have any
I
nominations?
would recommend, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to handle the nomination for chairman, that you turn the meeting over to someone other than yourself, since you may be a candidate.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Bill Don, who's the vice chair.
Okay?
Okay, that being said, are there any nominations for chairman?
I nominate Mr. Reeves.
Any others? None being heard. Do we vote on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Don?
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Don?
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes?
Mr. Aller?
Yes.
And Ms. Warren?
Yes.
Okay, now you're going to turn it back over to me?
It's all yours.
Turn it back over. Thank you.
It's turn.
Okay, so now we nominate and vote for a vice chair. Do we have any nominations for a vice chair?
I'd be happy to nominate Mr. Don as vice chair.
We have a second?
Second that.
Any other nominations? May we have a vote?
Okay, Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Aller?
Yes.
And Ms. Warren?
Yes.
Okay. Do we do the oaths of office now?
Well, do you want to finish the appointments of the board professionals for the year?
I didn't even see that on the agenda here. I must have an old
You
agenda.
have an old one.
Okay. Yes, we do want to appoint the professionals. So, we're going to, we don't have to do a vote on this, as I recall. We just do consensus on this.
Unless someone has other
Can I call you?
nominations.
Okay.
Scheduled for tomorrow.
Well, we have Ms. Gruhl here from Higher Gruhl, who's worked for this board for a number of years, her and her corporation, her company. They've done the master plan. How many times have they?
We need to stop the meeting.
Terrell. It's a Thank you, yes. Thank you. Sorry, we had no heat at home, and that was PSE&G calling in.
To tell you they had no heat?
Sorry about that, I apologize.
Well, we have a shed that, so Higher Gruhl, I think, has done a wonderful job over the years for us, and they're also the planner for the planning board, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And they've done our master plan, I think the reexamination report, as well as other specialty reports that they've done. that have proven very useful actually to this board. When you, sometimes easy to forget that these things exist, but when you go back and look at them, they do provide nice guidance. So I would nominate Hire Gruel as our planner.
I'll second that.
Do we have any other nominations?
I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay. Do we have a roll call or vote?
Okay, Mrs. Don,
Yes.
Mr. Polipiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Ms. Aller,
Yes.
and Ms. Weber.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Look forward to working with you this year.
And then the engineer. We need to appoint the engineer as well. And this is recent for us. I think we've had, it's Omland with Mr. Keller has been the representative from Omland for the past year or so. And until the past year or so, we really haven't had the need for an engineering service. But I think he's done an adequate job. And as you recall, he helped us on the Seton Hall parking lot application with that contentious and somewhat confusing parking question of whether it was occupied or not. And so he was helpful there. So I'm willing to nominate them.
Would that be for consulting engineers?
Yes.
Because normally the board will use the township engineer otherwise?
Yeah, it would be on an as-needed basis, depending on the application and the extent of the application. Obviously, for smaller, minor, applications, we would do that in-house, but for larger site plan, subdivision-type applications, then you would go to your consulting engineer.
Okay. That's agreeable. So may we have a
Yes.
second?
I second.
No, that's just all those in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Opposed?
Any opposed?
I abstain.
There's one abstention from Mr. Adler. Okay, so we've selected our planner and our consulting engineer, and now for the board attorney. I'm trying to think of somebody that... I think Mr. Dwyer has done a wonderful job for us over the years. He's been reliable, beyond competent, thorough. He represented us before the New Jersey court up through the appellate level with Seton Hall, and unflappable temperament, which is nice, and knows the law, and lets us make the decisions, understands his role, and he's there when we need him. So I would nominate him to continue to be, I do nominate him to continue to be our board attorney. Do we have any other discussions?
I would second that.
Do we have any other nominations? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so now we move on to the oaths of office.
Secretary?
We need to appoint a secretary now, too. I'm sorry, Jetta. Jetta, how long have you been doing this? About 3 years now with us?
3 years.
3 years, right? Okay. She's done a good job and picks up the phone when I call, which is important, and gives me the answers I need, responds when I have emails. So I will nominate her for our board secretary.
I'll second.
Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Welcome again, Jetta.
Thank you,
Good to have you here.
thank you.
Now may we move to the oaths of office?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is this something that you read out?
You can all read it yourselves on the record, that'd be great.
Okay,
One by one, or just?
All together?
All together.
okay, I'll start out. I, Donald Reeves, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and to the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people. And I do further solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties as a member of the South Orange Zoning Board of Adjustment according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the public, so help me God.
Thank you. Is there one missing?
You gave them two?
I got five.
You have them all?
I got five, you're right.
Okay, so now we move on to the application this evening. This is case 1009.
Mr. Chairman, there's one other order.
I'm like 0 for 4. I think I struck out twice.
I apologize. At this point,
Are we supposed to be sworn in
At
for
this
the
point,
year?
we'd like to take the opportunity to swear in our engineer and planner for the year of 2014 for any factual testimony they may give during this year. Would you please raise your right hands? Do you, Sal Renda and Susan Gruel, solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, factual testimony that you'll give to this board throughout this year on any application is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. That's it.
We sure?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. Case 1009, Ellen Butler by Calles. If I pronounce that wrong, you'll correct me when you come on up. This is 275 Richmond Avenue, C variance to build a deck over the footprint of an existing patio.
Probably the mark those.
So I want to introduce my project just quickly, and then I'll turn it over, the mic over to my architect, Ashraf Raghav.
Make sure you speak really closely
Can't hear
into
me,
that.
okay.
Otherwise, he shines the light at us, so.
Okay, so I'm just introducing the project, and then I want to turn over the mic to Ashraf Raghav, who is my architect and my expert tonight.
Could I interrupt you for a minute to ask you to raise your right hand?
Oh,
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give this board tonight is the whole truth?
yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ellen Butler Picalis, and my address is 275 Richmond Avenue.
Thank you.
Okay. So I moved to Richmond Avenue nearly 2 years ago in the spring of 2012. I lived there with my 3 children, Esme, who's an 8th grader at South Orange Middle, Emmett, a 7th grader, and Elias, who's in the 1st grade at South Mountain Elementary. I'm bringing you a plan for a deck I'd like to build in my backyard. I have a few pictures of the yard as it looks now, actually without the snow, that I'd like to pass to you, so you can look at them while I'm talking. Do I need to?
How many are there, Jetta? There's 3. Should we, not what, A1, 2, and 3?
Okay.
Were these photos in the application that you, no, step back there, or else we can't hear you. Okay, were these photos in the application that you sent us in any materials?
No.
Okay.
May I ask you, Ms., is it Picalis or
You know, my
Butler
last name is actually Butler, so you can just,
Ms. Butler?
that's easier, yeah.
You have before us on the easel a set of plans.
Yes,
Is that the same plans? Are those the same plans?
think so, yeah.
That were given to the board?
Yes.
So what we'd like to do is mark that plan set as A1, okay? If that's all right with you. And then, I guess we can go to the one she submitted.
So A2, A3, and A4?
They have different dates, though.
Or they do that?
A1 is 12/26, 2013.
No, he means Exhibit A1
I'm-
as the plan. That's the sheet number that's on the plan, but
I understand, but they have different dates, that's what I'm saying.
there's a revised plan with a new revision date from December 19th.
Last revised 12/19,
Okay.
okay. And then we'll mark the photos. You want to mark them all together, Mr. Chairman, or
Yeah,
separately?
We can mark them all together, they're the same area. Three
Okay, so this
photos.
will be A2, three
Yes.
photos?
Yes.
A2A, A2B, A2C.
Okay, do we need to mark those photos at the bottom too?
The photos marked A2 and 3, Ms. Butler, are those photos that you took?
The ones you're looking at?
Yes.
No, Ashraf took them.
Oh, okay. The architect took them?
Yes,
Okay, and they accurately depict the back of your house as shown?
yep.
Might as well mark.
So we would mark this one A3.
There's a photo board, Ms. Butler, on the bottom of the easel. That's an exhibit of yours as well. And we'll mark that as A3. Could you describe in the microphone, please, if you would, what A3 is?
A3 is a board with pictures of my house on it, the front and the back.
And those pictures, again, were taken by your architect,
Yes,
and they accurately depict the information shown.
yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Can I go ahead? Okay, thank you. So you can see from the pictures I've given you a little bit about our neighborhood. We don't have big lots, and our houses are close together. In fact, I share a driveway. We know that what we do on our property in our neighborhood affects the people around us, but even as we respect each other's privacy, we really like seeing one another over the fence, such as it were. My neighbors on either side enjoy their decks in the summer. One is an avid griller and smokes meat, which his extended family is often over to enjoy. The other neighbors spend hours tending a beautiful container garden on their back deck. The deck I'm proposing would come within 10 feet of my garage. I would remove the small bump out that's currently attached to the house. You can see the bump out in the picture I circulated. I asked Ashraf, my architect, to come up with a design that would provide eating and play areas for my kids and would gracefully accommodate the way the shared driveway curves into my backyard. The existing patio, which you can see in the pictures, was built over 30 years ago. It's seven steps down from the house. It's limited as a place to eat or play. It's not inviting, and I can't keep an eye on my kids from the house when they're so far down below the level of the kitchen windows. Also, it sits crookedly on the roots of a young maple tree. An arborist advised me that to preserve the tree and a patio, I'd need to take up the patio periodically and cut the tree's roots to keep them from pushing up the pavers. I lost a number of trees during Hurricane Sandy, so I'm eager to keep this one as shade for the house. If I were to follow the 20-foot rule, my deck would be divided into two small, separate lobes. We'd need 2 sets of stairs down, and neither lobe would be large enough to accommodate a table that could hold my family and dinner guests. Also, neither side would be large enough to contain my very 3 independent children without a lot of fighting. So I'm asking your permission to improve my property in a manner that makes sense for a lot the size of mine. I can understand that if I had 50 yards between my garage and house, a deck that closed the distance to 10 feet would cramp the green space and change the nature of the property and the neighborhood. On lots like mine, though, where outdoor living space is at a premium, the deck I'm hoping to build is generous in size only relative to the house. I've done a lot of work on the house. Last year I added a hot water heater, replaced the boiler and many of the water lines, and finished the basement. I hope to update the kitchen in the next few months. It still has 50-year-old appliances and cupboards. To have a fully usable and attractive outdoor living space in the back would add considerable value to my property for my family and for all future owners. Thank you for your consideration.
Sure.
Ms. Butler, could you answer a question, please? You mentioned that to build a deck, you had to divide it into two. I didn't understand that part. Could you help me understand that?
Yeah, is that on this plan? You would have to come up with a picture of...
Okay, you'll need to take the microphone with you. You can take it off and walk with it.
So in this picture, you can see this is, if the radius were observe the 20-foot radius, what happens to the deck. You can see there's one small corner over here, and then there's another corner over here, but the piece that connects the deck essentially would be
Okay.
eliminated.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
You have questions?
Public questions.
Yeah, should we allow the public to answer? I mean, that was, does the public have any questions?
Except for those two.
Okay. So are you going to, is the architect going to come forward? Come on up. You both can stand up there. It's okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ashraf Ragab. I'm the architect of record on these drawings.
Get closer to that microphone.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give to this board this evening is the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Last name is Ragab, R-A-G-A-B. First name is Ashraf, A-S-H-R-A-F. The address is 39 Camden Road, Hillsborough, New Jersey.
Thank you.
You might want to pull up the microphone or actually just hold it. That's better.
Mr. Ragib, are you a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Could you please tell the board what your qualifications for education and experience are?
I graduated in 1994 from City College of New York with a Bachelor of Architecture. I'm licensed in the states of New Jersey and New York, and I've been the principal of Emerald Design Studio since 2001.
Have you testified before any board?
Yes, plenty of boards. I don't believe this board is one of them.
How many boards have you, ballpark?
20 maybe, or 25.
In New Jersey?
In New Jersey, yes.
Okay. We have any questions? And how do I spell your last name again?
Ragab, R-A-G-A-B.
R-A-G-A-B. Rajab?
Ragab.
Ragab, R-A-G-A-B.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, no questions? Okay, we recognize you as an expert in architecture.
Thank you. The project we're asking for relief on is a single-family residence with an existing rear stone patio that you can see from the pictures that is in a state of disrepair, not very well cared for, and it's been there for a while, so parts of it have crumbled. The tree that Ms. Bickel, Ms. Butler had mentioned has popped up some of the pieces of the stone, and it's separated from the kitchen by about 7 steps, which makes it a bit inaccessible because of the different level. So Ms. Butler has proposed or has hired me to design a rear deck, which we did. We proposed a rear deck that pretty much follows the same contours of the existing stone patio. It's actually slightly less in area because of her impervious coverage is a little bit over, so we're reducing the impervious coverage slightly with this proposed deck, and we notched it out to preserve that existing tree there. So the deck kind of wraps around it. And that deck is only 2 steps below the existing kitchen, and then it's 5 steps above the backyard. So it's a lot more accessible from the house, even though it's still 5 steps higher than the grade around. The variance we're here to request is because of the deck comes closer than 20 feet to the accessory building, which is the existing detached structure in the back there. It actually comes to within 9'6" of the corner of the garage, and the requirement is that there should be a 20-foot distance between the principal building and the accessory structure. Otherwise, everything else is within. The impervious coverage, as I said, is being reduced by 1 percentage point, and the zoning officer has told me that that's acceptable, that it does not require a variance.
Well, that would be because the ordinance, the new ordinance, why don't you explain that?
Well, the ordinance requires a maximum of 40% lot coverage. The existing condition is almost 43%. They're actually reducing, once they're allowed to maintain that 43%, but they're actually reducing the coverage down to about 42%. Right. So they're reducing the lot coverage. It's still slightly above, but they would be allowed to keep it at the 43% because it's an existing condition.
But isn't there also in the new ordinance the 10% overage for a deck?
The 10%.
Right, so they'd be allowed to go up to 44%.
They could go to 44% as long as the deck portion was, that 4% was only the deck.
Right.
And they put in a drywall system to compensate for the additional runoff.
Right. So in either case, they're covered.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Sheet A2 has only the existing conditions and some images of the driveway ends and the small sort of a mudroom that's being removed. We're proposing to remove the bump out, which is a mudroom attached to the kitchen. The 2 images show the rear of the residence, and it's drawn up in the bottom there. Sheet A-3 shows the actual proposed deck in plan, the framing of it, and in the 2 sides elevation and the rear elevation of the deck. I believe we marked this as A3 exhibit, which is the site plan in the center there with a legend of all the images that we're taking. These 3 images were taken from the front of the residence, left side, middle, and right side. Number 4 was taken of the driveway, looking towards the rear, and that's the detached garage that's in the rear of the property. The driveway is actually shared between the 2 properties, so both of them get to use the driveway. Number 5 is looking across the other side of the property at the detached garage and showing the deck of the neighbor. So is number 8. Number 7 is looking straight at the back of the property, showing the rear yard. And number 6 is looking at the left side neighbor with their small deck and the shared driveway in between.
Why don't you pass that around so the board members can take a look at it?
Mr. Ragab, can I ask you a question about A2, which is the photographs that were handed out? It appears that on one of them, which is A2C, it shows the back steps and the 7 steps. So is it fair to say that the deck would then be approximately at the height of where the white ends and the clapboard starts?
Yes.
Roughly along that line?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to see?
Something small.
Okay, Mr. Ragab, you can go ahead and continue. Okay, do we have questions? No questions?
So the building is compliant with all the yards, with the exception of the distance between the edge of the deck and the garage, correct?
Yes, the zoning ordinance dictates that there's a minimum distance of 20 foot between the principal building and the accessory structure. And the zoning ordinance of South Orange also requires a deck to be a part of the principal building, which I tend to disagree with that, but it is considered part of the principal building. So the 20-foot actually includes the deck, even though the deck is not really a habitable space, it's not a heated space, but it's still considered a portion of the principal building. So the 20-foot distance becomes a variance issue.
But as far as front, side, and rear yard, you are compliant?
Everything else complies, yes. 1 second. Yes, everything else complies.
Under the deck is a crawl space?
Yes, it's it's covered with lattice on all sides, but it is a crawl space, yes.
Would you remove, and you're going to remove the brick pavers that are there now?
Yes,
So the surface below the deck will be left as dirt?
yes, will be a finished grade, yes. Will be just, yes, just topsoil.
Right, just soil, right.
What do you think the purpose of the 20-foot setback is?
I'm not sure, I believe it was meant for maybe carriage houses or any sort of accessory structure that shouldn't be closer than 20 foot to the house, so that it doesn't crowd the rear yard. But in this case, it is applied for the rear deck.
You know, it's an interesting question, because when you look at the zoning, the side yard is 4 feet. So theoretically, you could have two 35-foot tall buildings 8 feet apart. Whereas within the same lot, you have to be 20 feet apart. I'm sure it had something to do with circulation within the lot. You know, if you needed some sort of emergency circulation or something. I mean, you wouldn't want a property, you probably wouldn't want a 3-story building right next to a 1.5-story carriage house that were 10 feet apart.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't think we've ever really nailed down the reasoning behind the 20-foot setback. One of the concerns, though, is, as Mr. Don said, circulation around the building. When the application was submitted, a copy of the applicant back in September, of last year. A copy of the application was sent to the fire department, and the fire chief reviewed the application, because the concern, of course, fire safety, his men being able to get their equipment around the building, should anything happen. And the chief did send a letter to the board on October 22nd, 2013, stating that he had reviewed the applicant's request and had found that there are no issues with the application. So the fire chief doesn't have an issue with the encroachment of that setback. I believe everybody got a copy of the letter? We did.
Yes.
Yeah, Chief Markey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and the existing fencing is going to remain, but that separates the driveway from the deck?
The fence?
Yes.
Yes, the fence is to remain because Ms. Butler would like to still keep some sort of a secure line for the children so that they don't run into the driveway.
Yeah, the issue of the 20-foot setback, we've never resolved it, and I think it's sort of like the Bermuda Triangle. I don't think we're ever going to resolve it. We've gone into issues of fire code, possibly, of, structures too close to each other, but like Mr. Don says, you can have two 30-foot tall houses within 8 feet of each other. Also, did it have to do with massing and with having a carriage house too close to the principal house and it not looking aesthetically pleasing? That seems to me to be a pretty good argument.
But we've also struggled with the sort of the issue that if you push, to keep the separation, if you push the garage farther back, then what you do is extend the driveway and increase lot coverage, which we don't want either. And I think in this case, given this kind of interestingly sawtooth lot, there's really nowhere else to move the garage to. And I think that's always been an issue right there, where you could potentially keep moving the garages back on some of these deep lots, but then you would just extend the driveways.
Can Mr. Ragab testify whether this is a C1 or C2 variance? Is he allowed to do that if he's just a mere architect instead of a planner?
Are you a licensed planner, sir?
No, I'm not.
You want to ask him or the homeowner whether or not they have compared coverages with other lots in the zone or in the neighborhood.
Have you done any research for the adjacent lots?
Nothing formal. I'm not sure how to answer this. I know that the neighbor on the right side submitted a similar application a few years ago. You talked to them about it, and they are within 9.5 feet of their garage.
That's the neighbor immediately on the right?
Immediately on the right, and the neighbor on the left replaced his garage, and he built it too close to the house, so that limited the size of his deck. So he also came across this issue. So they've both dealt with that. I don't know, to speak to the question about the lot coverage, I don't have an answer for that. I know that a few months ago you saw my neighbors, two down, who were building an extension on the back of their house within the same range.
Same issue.
Yeah.
So they have a bigger yard than I do.
So it's not entirely out of character in that area.
Right. An architect can't opine on C1 or C2? I mean,
Susan may object to his qualifications.
I mean, even if they're just an architect.
Watch how you say that.
I'm saying that ironically, because most architects know this kind of.
You could, board can certainly take the testimony for what it's worth.
For not expert testimony.
For what it's worth.
Okay, for what it's worth. Have you considered the C1 or C2 considerations in this about, do you know? No? Okay. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean we can, approve or disapprove on that, but it's often nice to hear what land use exception you're going for. Okay, do we have other questions?
I think Ms. Gould does.
Do you want to ask them?
Mr. Chairman,
Is that what we did that for this?
if I may.
Ms. Gruhl, yeah.
Just in terms of some of the facts that the applicant has stated, and I would suggest, based upon the facts and what the testimony of the architect is too, that this could be, they've testified as to both hardship, which would be a C1, and the benefits outweigh the detriments, which would be a C2. They've explained, both of them have explained what the benefits are to providing this deck and how it enhances the livability of their house, and that there really are no detriments per se, that they're maintaining, if not reducing the coverage, they're maintaining the existing mature tree, and that there is no way, because of the size of the lot, for them to really extend the garage farther back to provide that distance. So from their testimony, I think that there's a factual basis for both of those C variances.
Thank you. Okay. We have any other questions for Ms. Gruhl or for the applicant? Okay, do y'all have anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Public? Okay, all right, so now we'll consider the application and we'll ask questions among ourselves. Okay, any comments?
Well, I just think, once again, we're struggling with this 20-foot separation issue, which we've struggled with for a number of years, and is always a bit difficult to figure out. And I think it's good that, it's on the books and it's a law, and I think it's good that we think about it. And I think the fact that we've started going to the fire chief is a good idea, because I think we always do. That's the most likely reason it's on the books, and so it's good we checked with him. I think given that we have the letter from the fire chief and that we don't see any other particular issues with the 9-foot 6-inch separation, I agree with Susan that I think this application, the testimony supports both a C1 and a C2. I think the lot is irregularly shaped in the back, and it would be difficult to put the garage anywhere else without covering the whole lot and driveway. And I think the accommodation they've made to preserve the tree and to fit the deck in there, both enhances the property and doesn't particularly cause any detriment. So I'm comfortable with the application.
I feel like in one form or another, we've heard this application a couple different times.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one, especially since it's a deck, there is no enclosed portion. I don't see any real detriment. And as Michael said, I think that the odd shape of this lot really does make it virtually impossible to move the garage to a place where they could be compliant without greatly increasing coverage, which is not something that we really want.
Then they require a variance for lot coverage.
Right.
So,
I mean,
the fact is that to the house proper is still more than 20 feet. It's really to the surface of the deck that we're dealing with, and that's obviously per the definition in the zoning. So based on those items and the things that Michael had raised, I don't have a real problem with supporting this application.
Yeah, I think, Ms., were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that I agree with what was said, and I think that it's also telling that the fence will remain where it is, and therefore we don't have any unpredictability with the change of the circulation. And I believe also the fact that the fence will stay where it is an indicator that it will seem fairly the same, and if not an improved look to the neighbors, the people that it's affecting directly. And if I was the neighbor, I think I would want to see this change as well. So for those reasons stated, as well as what I just said, I feel comfortable with this application.
Yeah, I think Ms. Gruhl did the applicant a favor by pulling together the C1 and C2 testimony. The rudiments were there. I was trying to get you to give it more explicitly, but I agree with her that the rudiments were there. I don't think she was imagining things. This, to my mind, satisfies both the C1 and C2. The hardship of the lot shape with trying to push the garage back is impractical because then you'd have to pave over most of the backyard. You'd have with a worse condition. As far as the C2, if you took a look at the back of the property in some of these photos here as it stands now, it really is relatively, I don't mean to insult you, you didn't build the house, but it's kind of unattractive as it is now. You have this large, this height from the kitchen down to the ground, and here it provides a transition to the ground, as well as provides a usable outdoor space for entertainment. So on that grounds, I think it's better than what exists right now. As far as negative conditions go, it's marginally reducing lot coverage. As far as the question of massing that might occur with the 20-foot distance between an accessory and the principal structure, Mr. Don articulated it well, is that this is not an enclosed structure, it's an open structure, so that question of massing is less. I should also remind the board, not that it's entirely a precedent, but that we did recently approve a similar application that actually involved an enclosed part of the house, and this is less imposing than that. So on those grounds, I think it satisfies C1, C2. We stated the positive criteria, and we said that there was no significant negative criteria.
Can I ask one question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Mr. Ragab, what's the total square footage of the proposed deck?
It's 360 square feet.
360?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, comments? May we have a motion?
I'll move we approve the application as submitted.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Don?
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Adler?
No.
And Ms. Werwin?
Yes.
Okay, the application passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the business for this evening. Just to, again, reiterate, I'm in contact with the Board of Trustees and encouraging them to move quickly to either reappoint or appoint members.
And you have to do both, right? Because we have one open position as well.
Well, they're certainly going to have to bring in a new member
Right.
because we had Mr. Groman's resignation.
Right.
But then we had our capable Mr. Descala, Mr. Semper, and Mr. Shapiro, who are showing their loyalty right now by waiting in the wings here. And we'll just have to wait and see. It's not under our control. Mr. Dwyer and I are both, like I said, in contact with the Board of Trustees as much as we can, trying to push them along, but it's their prerogative. And they are interviewing people, so it's not as if no progress has been made. Any questions? Okay. Yeah, well, Michael said he would be here, but he's not, so Michael, if you're watching or you're listening, you need to make it to the next meeting. We have a little something for you. Okay, with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Where's your gavel?
Get a gavel.